joined by Elizabeth Wislar, who is our costume director, or costume designer, excuse me, for Romeo and Juliet and Two Gentlemen of Verona. Let's welcome her. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And so we're going to hear all the juicy details about costumes.
Yes.
Whatever details there are. We were just discussing how much math actually is involved in creating a costume, which
Oh,
I
yes.
had not considered. I'm glad I don't do that.
Yeah. We engineer with fabric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
makes total sense when you say it like that. But so anyway, that's why I forgot to introduce everybody and start the show. Elizabeth, we're just going to start. Tell us about you. What led you to your career in costume design and here to the Blackfriars?
Well, we have an hour. Hold on. No,
Buckle up, everybody.
I went to an undergraduate school, and I filled out an application for a work study job. I was an art student, and I wrote down that I knew how to sew and flip burgers, and so they put me in the costume shop, and I couldn't find it the first day because I didn't know what backstage meant. So I was late for work, and I was very embarrassed. But once I figured out what backstage meant, I was working in the costume shop, and the woman running the shop ended up being a lifelong mentor of mine. And she's like, look, I see you know how to draw, you like to sew, you're kind of flailing around a bit in this art school thing. I was doing some fashion classes, and they kept trying to say, well, that looks like a costume, which is like a derision at the time, but I took it as a compliment. And I said, oh, I can't afford to do costumes. And she said, well, what do you mean? Because for fashion shows, you self-produce. You provide all the materials and everything, and labor if you need additional labor. And she was like, oh, no, we give you a budget. And I was like, say no more. I'm struggling out here. She's like, no, I know, because you've been pulling from the fabric stock in the shop. So I transferred immediately. It was my second year there. And she said, make me your advisor, so she could kind of fast track me through, because I was like, I can't afford to be here any longer than 4 years. And so she got me all the right classes and all that kind of stuff. And I just did everything she said to do, and here I am. But it was an eye-opener. I didn't know. I assumed, like everybody else, that the clothing just kind of fell out of the sky and landed on the bodies, or the actors just wore it in from home. I really didn't know it was a profession. I didn't know it was something that was provided by other people until I started working in that costume shop. And I love to make, and so I intentionally chose a graduate school program that would allow me to continue advancing in my making skills, but also learn more about the business of being a costume designer. I just barely touched it by the time I left undergrad, and I didn't know the paperwork, and I needed more of the discipline of it. And so graduate school provided that for me. And so I looked at a map, because we had maps back then, and a big old paper map of the United States. And I thought, where is theater happening? And so LA felt too far away. I grew up in Western Maryland. I went to school in Washington University in St. Louis. So LA was just like really far away, and there's a lot of news about LA. I was just like, I don't know. And Seattle felt too overcast and rainy from what I had heard. I'd never been there.
That's fair.
Yeah, and so I ended up in Chicago because I was familiar with it from going up on the train from St. Louis and visiting. There's over 100 theaters there at any given time, and I thought, if I can't do costume design here, I really should find a new career. I'm just not hireable, you know. And so I was in Chicago for a really long time. I was a full-time freelance designer there. I ended up founding and running a private build shop because of the 100 theaters. I found out only 5 of them had costume shops. And so I would be at a meeting, and the set designer would be there with their technical director, and they were talking about how they're going to build the set for them. And the costumes was all like, good luck with that. We look forward to seeing what you come up with. And so my money was where my mouth was, and I started a private build shop. And I did that until I had reached done. I was just done with being in the city. I was done with working so much. I never advertised. Being the only private build shop actually in a tri-state area is not a good problem to have. And I could not make the phone stop ringing. I mean, it just was an abundance. It was an overabundance of work. I'd put so much into the company that I had not another ounce to give it. And so I sold it to my employees and went into teaching. And so teaching at the university level is what brought me to Stanton. So that's how I ended up here. Yeah. But I always wanted to, my mentor was such a huge influence on me that I thought, I want to do that someday. And so I thought I always meant to do that. I just thought I should have some experience to relate to. I thought I needed something to talk about. But it turns out what I really needed to do was mature into the place where I could listen. I think the students need us to listen more than we talk. And so I eventually reached the point where I was able to be in space with them and listen and find out what do they want the industry to look like. I already know what it looked like for me, but what do you want it to be, and how can we all work together to make that happen? So, yeah. So I'm now at I'm the costume director for Washington Lee University. So, but I started at JMU. I'm just kind of like working my way around the universities here. I'm kidding.
Yeah. So
I plan on staying where I am.
yeah. So the teaching position is what brought you to this area, or is it just being sort of back in home turf, nearish to Maryland?
Well, my parents do live 2 hours north of here. I have threatened multiple times to move in with them and take care of them. They're not ready for that. I don't know if they ever will be.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm a lot. And so we all are very independent in our own ways. But yeah, no, being 2 hours from them is also important. And Stanton is beautiful. It's a beautiful little town. It's very safe. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, we like it.
There's a lot to offer here.
Yeah.
It's uphill both ways. So my kids get a chance to say that someday. I mean it. That they walk to school uphill both ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's really lovely here, and it's an intentional choice to live a smaller life and to have a smaller footprint. So.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the ecological footprint and how that works into your philosophy soon. I do have a question about that because it is fascinating to me, as it should be for everyone, I think. I think we should do more things ecologically. So in a space like ours, when you finally got booked to do a show here, where this is a space where other types of special effects are really pared down, right? So we rely a lot on some set dressing, but mostly the clothes on the actors' bodies. So can you tell us what kinds of adjustments you made, or what you've learned from designing for a couple of seasons here? For those who don't know, Elizabeth also designed our shows in the summer. So tell us a little bit about that, about learning how to work in here.
Yes. What I love about this space is that the whole set doesn't end up in a dumpster at the end of every show. That is a lot to be said. I have spent an entire career watching scenery, majority, go into a dumpster after a show. But yeah, the costumes here help tell where, when, who, why, how, as they always do, but here it's much more, because especially if it's a returning somebody who's been here many times. I mean, I think the first time you're in a space, you're just like, wow. But if you've been here for many years, you're like, what are they going to do next? And what's it going to look like? And so I like to speak to every audience member. But they do rely on us to say where we are, who we are, when we are, and how we are in that space. And so, yeah, costumes is a big part of that. I haven't adjusted too much, but I will say I've always enjoyed decorating the entire costume, or having the entire costume have something to look at. And here is a chance for finally everybody to see it, because you're going to have at one point a performer with their back to you, which is great, actually. And so I like to give them a little something to look at.
Okay. Yeah, so like the opportunity to add more visual elements. Maybe,
absolutely.
Like, more is more.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, when appropriate.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So that kind of does lead us into your ecological philosophy. So can you tell us about your personal philosophy of building versus buying versus adapting costumes that are already in stock? Talk to us about that, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
As somebody who is a creator of clothing and garments, I've spent a long career with the textile industry. And the textile industry is one of the biggest impactors of our water systems in the planet. And it's gotten to a very bad place. And I've participated in it. Fast fashion is a problem. Textile waste is a huge problem. And it's what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? So what can I do? I have some power, I have some control in my area. And so I have also noticed over the years that we're filling the labor void with stuff. And so if there's not enough people to hire to build, we just start buying things because we can't have them made. And so not as many people know how to make clothing as they used to. It's not a necessity anymore. You can go get clothing. You don't have to make your own clothing. You don't have to know somebody who makes clothing. And those are incredible skill sets because I've made a whole career out of it. But also, it's really impactful and profound. And when I've discovered the pleasure of bringing something to life from the page, that two-dimensional drawing into a three-dimensional wearable sculpture, I've yet to find anything else that brings me as much joy. I really haven't. And so I want that. I want that for many people. And so I would like to value the labor of people, those advanced skills, the training of those skills, the nourishment of those skills, the equitable pay of those skills over purchasing items that already exist or items that are being made new. And so I would like to see a shift in the entire industry, to be honest, away from purchasing, but rather taking that purchasing money and applying it to livable wages for people to come up the way I was able to, and to be able to build and make. In 1997, I found myself with my mentor working on Baroque operas in Germany. She designed for the Göttingen Handel Opera Festival in Germany. I overheard her assistant quit one night while I was working late in the costume shop, and I said, I've never wanted anything more, even though I didn't know what it was. And so the summer after my junior year and the summer after my senior year, and then all through grad school as well, I left school a month early, which now that I'm on the other side of that as a professor, wow. I owe so many people thank you notes for that. I had no idea what I was asking my professors at the time to be like, so I'm going to leave a month early, so I need to do all of my work and have my exams. And I would fly off to Germany not even knowing if I graduated because the internet didn't exist then.
Yeah.
And so an email, but now I know what I did. And so I'm very thankful. But and I was also thankful for that opportunity. But in 1997, I was paid $25 an hour to be the draper for the Handel Opera Festival. My wage didn't change. It actually went down for a long time when I got to Chicago. And when I started my private build shop, I set that as my minimum wage because I thought that's where minimum wage should have been. We just hadn't gotten there. And so I refused to pay anybody below that. And so I never had a problem finding anybody to work for me. But we're still there, And so that's hard. And so how can we overcome that? How can we shift monies away from the stuff and give it to the people, and cultivate those skills and cultivate that curiosity and cultivate that growth in such a way that we have people that can make, that can create, as opposed to shop, How can we get away from shopping and go back to making? And so a lot of the costumes that you see are from thrift stores and from Poshmark, especially with contemporary. Contemporary is more expensive than period, because period costumes I have an abundance of. I have access to them. You wouldn't believe what they got upstairs. And so it's like one of the best closets. But when it's contemporary, it's a little bit harder because we don't tend to hold on to contemporary things in stock because it's such a high rate of turnover and it changed, And it's just like, why would we keep a bin of jeans? How often do we do jeans? And so, there is more money spent going to thrift stores and looking for pants and shoes and stuff to do contemporary than using what we already have access to in the period shows. I'm not saying we should stop doing contemporary. I'm just saying you might be surprised to find the difference between the two. And also contemporary, when you're wrong, the audience knows you're wrong. You know, like you relate to a character and you're like, oh, this person reminds me of my uncle. My uncle would never wear that. You know, like when you're wrong in contemporary as a costume designer, it's actually significantly harder to design a contemporary show than a period show. Because a period show, you're like, way back whensie, and the audience will kind of go along with you a little bit. But when it's contemporary, they're like, those aren't the right shoes. You know, that kind of stuff. Because they were there. They know, you know. And so it's a little bit, it's actually harder to do contemporary and will cost more to source all of that from various thriftings and stuff than to pull it all together from all the stocks that we have access to. So
that's a great cue, actually, to talk about the difference in design. Leo, would you mind passing out? So what we have are, just for everybody to flip through while you listen to us talk, are printed out copies of Elizabeth's renderings, preliminary drawings for the costume designs.
Yes.
So these are sketches. These are probably not going to look exactly like what you see on stage, because that's the nature of collaboration and creation, right? But it's always fascinating to see how things begin and how the design sort of starts with the tone of the renderings. So since we're already kind of talking about sourcing versus building, talk to us about the time periods for both of these shows. Let's start with Romeo and Juliet. So
Romeo and Juliet,
contemporary.
Yeah, Romeo and Juliet is set in the year that the director was a senior in high school. I found out, and so very committed to that idea. And so we started immediately looking at images from that time period, who was influencing the fashion of that time period. The influencers tended to be kind of like celebrity status as far as in the acting world or in the music world. And so we looked at a lot of that kind of stuff. The two-piece velour tracksuits made by Juicy Couture were a really big deal. And so I said, well, we don't want to put other people's names and brands on stage. And so I said to the director, what if we kind of like rebrand this show in our own world? And so the Juliet tracksuit, instead of saying Juicy, it says Juliet on it.
Love it.
I love it too. It's probably one of the best ideas I've ever had. But so that was that. So we created that as like a through line, and also speaking about a lot of the influence of the fashion of that time was also street art and graffiti art, and we can't necessarily reflect that in this space. So I was like, what is the graffiti here? What is the street art? And it's these tapestries, and so I thought, well, let's make tapestry a fashion influence in this world. And so there's some tapestry pants, there's some tapestry hoodie, like all that kind of stuff. That was taken directly from this space to make it feel like this is the street art that this high school is reflecting on and fashioning themselves to make it feel part of the playhouse and part of this world, not as like this alien landing of contemporary clothing. It wanted to still feel like it was part of this specific theater. And so JNCO, which was called Jinko at the time, were these really wide leg pants.
Oh, I remember.
And so the shop manager here made a reproduction of basically a copy of those pants, but out of a maroon tapestry fabric that they had in stock over in the shop. And so Jeffrey is wearing those for the show, and it's really kind of fun to have things that are very much a silhouette of that time period, but of our world. Yeah. So those are just some fun things.
That's really fun. And you had fairly good luck in our thrift stores finding, 2003 period pieces.
Yes.
Wow. Well, that's exciting.
It was.
Yeah, we found out one of them was an Ascot's shirt from our camp graduates.
Yeah, I found a Shakespeare shirt at the Goodwill.
Yeah. In this town? What? Shocking. Yeah.
Well, what's the quote on it? It says.
It's for our graduated campers who are ASC old timers or Ascots, and the quote on the front is, "We have heard the chimes at midnight."
Yes.
And so if you go to camp here as a teenager and you graduate from camp, you get one of those shirts, and that's the only way you can get one. Unless somebody else.
Unless you find it at the thrift store, yeah.
Well, it looks like our character went to camp here.
Serendipity, that's great.
Yeah.
So there was some building that happened a little for
There
this,
was the
yeah.
tapestry pants,
Yeah.
the tapestry hoodie I made, but it was all with found materials, and so no new materials were purchased, and actually no new materials have been purchased in my career for quite a few years, actually. And it started out about 10, 15 years ago. It's when my kids were little, so they're 17 now. So yeah, about 15 years ago. I decided to do a personal experiment where I didn't throw anything away for a year. And, well, no, it started off as I won't buy anything new for a year, unless it was like undergarments or, you know,
Necessities.
specific little things that just is hard to find used. And so I did that, and it was a challenge at first, but then it just became a way of life. And then a few years ago, I decided to not throw anything away for a year, personally. And so anything that came into my house, I was responsible for. And so a plastic takeout container, that kind of stuff. And I washed it, and I kind of kept it and cataloged boxes in the basement. It's not for everyone. But I needed to see what I was doing. Mm-hmm. But it also challenged me when I was at the grocery store to like maybe not get that, but get this. And this is glass, and that kind of stuff. And so it was just something I wanted to do personally to see where I was, and to kind of take stock. But because I had been doing it in my career, it's like, why am I not doing this? Why am I not giving the same care and consideration personally? And honestly, a lot of it had to do with I was working too much. Winter's Tale was my 300th show professionally.
Oh, wow.
And you don't get to 300 without harm. I mean, that's really the truth of it. And so one year in Chicago, I designed 25 shows.
Wow.
1 year. And if it works out perfectly on a calendar, you're in tech every other week, which is not perfect, but that's not how it works out either. And so it was one of the worst years of my life, to be perfectly honest. And I used to brag about it and say, oh, guess what I did, And then I learned to stop doing that. And it wasn't because anybody said anything to me, but I realized I was saying it was okay. I was modeling it, I was mentoring it, and I was saying, this is what we should all be doing. And the truth was, I was doing it to make ends meet. I was on my own, and that's how many shows I had to do that year. But it was one of the worst financial years of my career because it was all 1099s, and at the end of the year, the accountant let me know exactly how much I owed. And I was paying rent on an apartment, but I was never there. My car was completely trashed because I was just basically like show to show in my car, eating fast food and stuff. And so it wasn't good. And so I was doing harm to me, to the environment, to the profession, to people that were looking up to me. And so that was a real eye-opener. That was 2005, when I realized that had to stop. But yeah, it started with Sound of Music and ended with Sound of Music. And I cannot tell you anything else I did in between the two shows.
That is quite a year. That is quite a year.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So not good, and so, yeah, that was a big eye opener. But that's when the whole sustainability thing, I went, wait, this isn't who I am. This isn't who I was brought up to be. None of this is who, it's not what I want. Yeah. I want to do what I'm doing, but I don't want to do it like this.
Yeah. I just find it so impressive, and I know it's made a huge difference around here. I know just from what I hear in the halls or like during tours and stuff, they're like, we came in under budget. Like, look at these beautiful costumes, but we still came in under budget. Like, ecologically.
Significantly.
And like, because I agree with you, environmentally, like it doesn't actually cost the way we think it will. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not as expensive to do things ecologically minded.
No. And so the goal is hopefully that those kind of savings will be passed forward and put into other places where it's needed to support people.
Yeah. So back to the shows. So, okay, so we have 2003 is the vibe for Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
Tell us what, we've seen some of the renderings, but it is definitely not that for Two Gentlemen of Verona.
No.
So what world will we be entering next week when Two Gents opens?
1992. No, I'm kidding. It's
Another banner year. Okay.
No, the director asked for a kind of a Baroque Rococo time period when we were wearing the frock coats and the big ascots, and just a fun, because there's a lot of language around the gentleman, but also I think it lends itself really well to this. And I will say it is really nice to have the two together, so that we're not just seeing all kind of like a one note. It gives me a chance to spread my wings a little bit. It gives me a chance to really go and dig around in stock here, or to the Handel Baroque Opera Festival that I worked on for many years. I've inherited those costumes, and so actually I'm sitting on top of a large collection that I'm glad to share some pieces from in this piece. And anybody else that wants to do Baroque opera, let me know, because it's one of the most expensive time periods to produce. But and actually, unfortunately, we're not using some of the more period accurate ones that we made from that time. This was from 1995 through 2000. Because we made them to be historically accurate, they're incredibly heavy. And they're meant to walk on, sing, and walk back out.
No such thing as a quick change in those either.
No,
you really
they are
can't
not
quick
meant
change
to go through the activity that happens up here. They're not for everyone. And so, unfortunately, we're not seeing a full range of those, but there are several pieces in the show. And so, so I have all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, that's convenient.
It's very convenient. And so, so glad to bring things back out and give them another chance. And also, I'm looking at work that I did when I was 19, 20, 21 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it's getting to live again, some of them.
I know.
That's great.
I was really good when I was 19, 20, 20. Oh my goodness. Well, because I had all the time in the world. I was at a university. Universities like little ecotopias, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And so you just get to be there and do. And so, so it's fun. And so I'm looking forward to having some of my students come and see the show. And then I could be like, when I was your age.
No pressure or anything.
So I know what's possible. No kidding. No, they're used to me saying that.
Well, I have a few more questions for Elizabeth, and then I will open it up to everybody here. But speaking of these two different types of design, do you have favorite pieces from each that you want everybody to look out for, or details on particular pieces?
The look out for pieces are the ones that disappear. I love that I've been able to hide one particular actor. In both shows, I've given clothing that hides into the theater.
Okay. Say more words about that, please.
So Romeo has this tapestry jacket, and the director discovered that if he put his hood up and stood against one of those tapestries, he would completely disappear.
You just...
When Mercutio and Benvolio come in looking for him, and so he hides real quick. It's really funny, I think. And then that same performer is playing a character, because it hasn't opened yet, I don't want to talk too much about it, but in Two Gents is playing a character that we're trying to kind of make disappear. And so I found a robe up in stock that matches these that's made out of that same fabric. I think it's hilarious.
Amazing. So the invisibility cloaks,
I know.
basically.
It's like, because honestly, how do you hide in this place? You don't. There's nowhere, but
Shared
like
lighting, no. You don't
I want to say we made it work.
Amazing. Amazing.
So it's like a through, because I have the chance to touch both shows, I can have some kind of, if you see both shows, you can be like, oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah. Were there any pieces that were particularly difficult to construct? Like we call them buck basket pieces, like the one thing that you have to put the most effort towards, to make the show go.
Well,
were
it's
there any
all
pieces
hard.
Like that? Yeah.
That's why we're worth so much money. What we're not talking about is the actors' involvement in all this.
Oh, yeah.
What I do is a necessary intimacy, and so the necessary intimacy backstage is putting clothing on people. But more than that, before we even get to that point, I have to ask them who they are, how they like to, as human beings, before you even get to character, who the person is coming into the room. Do you like to wear pants or skirts, tight, loose, long, short? You know, how do you see yourself on stage? How are you the best supported and comfortable? And then the character comes into the conversation. Well, what do you think this character would wear? Would it be similar to what you wear, or do we want to try something different? Do we want to push it? And so that's all part of this kind of necessary intimacy language, and the being with somebody else where we're trying on clothing. We all wear clothing every day. We're required to by society, but we make choices about what we're wearing as well. I chose this outfit today so I could be the impressive costume designer sitting on the stage. But that we all do that, and so that's real. And so I can't say that a performer coming in isn't actively making choices about what they put on every day already. So I have to listen to that and respond to that and say, you know, what do you think your character would wear? And so I didn't do any of this without them. Like, that's why I call the renderings placeholders. They're just a kind of a broad general idea based on the conversations I had with the director. But it's not a contract, and I'm not telling the performer this is what you actually will wear. I'm saying this is where we're starting. Here's a whole bunch of stuff that I've pulled or put together or sourced online through, because there's a lot of online thrifting now too. What do you think? Are we going in the right direction for this character? You know, because you will spend more time with this character than I ever will. I've read the script, of course. I'm going to come to all the meetings, but you know this character better than I ever will. And so I like to do that. And so everything that you see on stage, the performers have contributed to as well, just so you know. I can't take responsibility as like the sole costume creator for this show. There's also 3 incredibly skilled and talented people on staff here that are helping me. Cannot do it without them as well. If somebody leaves stage and then comes back in wearing something different quickly, that's not me. I didn't do that. That's some really skilled and trained wardrobe people that are making things so smooth that we don't even know it was, you know. And the performer, you know, either holding still or quickly doing something. And so there's a lot that we don't see that's intentional because we want to keep you in the story. But it's not, what's hard about what I do is slowing down to hurry up. I need to slow down, listen, take notes. And it's not always listening with ears, it's listening with eyes. Sometimes, you know, like reading somebody's reaction to something. They're like looking at a garment, you know, like trying to figure out, is it the color? Is it the shape? You know, like that kind of stuff. Is it itchy? You know, skin sensitivities are a big deal. I take them seriously. I call them allergies and aversions. You know, you don't have to be allergic to something to not wear it. It can be an aversion, you know, and so it's not hard, but it is necessary. And so slowing down is what's hard for me, because I'm like, let's go. But slowing down is really important, because if I don't do that, then I'm undoing all of the trust and respect that I'm hoping will be imparted between us, you know. So that's what I wish more people in my profession would understand. And I was working at a pace before that didn't allow me to do that, you know. And I had to work at that pace, you know, to make ends meet in Chicago and stuff. And so the slowing down isn't just the costume designer, it's everybody in the room. You know, we all need to kind of slow down, and it will get us actually there faster. When I first met with Vanessa, I said, I'll cost more, but I'll cost you less, you know, and that's that same kind of slow down to hurry up. Yeah, and so it's all kind of, they all go together for me. Yep.
Sure, yeah, that's the challenge, not so much the build as the
no.
the patience to get to the build.
Yeah, no, I love building.
Yeah.
And I'm really fast at it.
I would imagine.
Well, I've got
yeah.
30, and like somebody will say, how long did it take to make that? And I'll say 3 hours and 30 years. Like
Right.
those 30 years led to these 3 hours,
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, but I always add on the, because I used to just say 3 hours, and people are like, why are we paying you so much? I was like, because, now I'm like, no, because 30 years. Because I don't want to spend all night working on something. I want to go home and pet my dog, like I want to do what other people do when they're not doing theater, I want to have a life. And so I can be really fast, but I can't be really fast for 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and so it's a kind of a slow down to hurry up principle with that as well.
Yeah, I love that. So my last question for you is, how do you hope your designs shape the experience of the plays that we see?
My desire is that it looks like everybody walked in wearing what they already had in their closet. My goal is to bring it back to that assumption I had when I first started out in theater, was that it just fell from the sky and landed on the floor, that it's so perfect for what's happening that you forget about it, that you're in the story, that you're not taken out of the story because you're trying to figure out why somebody's wearing that, or that my goal is that it's actually so much a part of the story that it feels so natural that you don't actually go away thinking about the costumes at all. What the worst reviews I've received over my career were the ones where they just talked about the costumes, and I think that's horrible. I did a great disservice to the play if that's what you walked away with. That was never, it never should be a heavier hand than anything else, and so the goal is the story. And so just how can I contribute to the story? How can I help the story? How can I support the storytelling? But how can it feel like it's what everybody would have just picked out of their closet that day to wear, as that character? And so that's the goal. For me personally, is that that it just feels so natural that you're not really questioning it too much at all.
Of course, Juliet has a velour set of pants with her name on them. Of course.
Yeah.
Don't we all? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. We did 20 years ago. We totally did.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No.
I love that.
Juice, you should have offered that.
Right. All right. Well, I will open it up to questions from you all if you have them. Yeah.
Is it okay if I ask two?
Sure.
First, I hope it's okay that I remember this costume, but
It's okay.
In Winter's Tale, blue skies.
Yes.
And the
Yellow suit.
oh my gosh,
Yep.
Oh, that yellow suit.
sun
Yeah.
in the sky.
Yep.
And I was wondering if the song influenced the costume, or if the song influenced the costume.
Cab Calloway.
Yeah.
That's a direct copy of a Cab Calloway. Yeah, absolutely. The director said, I want Cab Calloway. I sent back a picture of Cab Calloway in the yellow suit, and he was like, yep, that's the one. And I went, gotcha, done. Consider it done.
And then the second question was, and I'm familiar to you, Aubrey, question was just, I was just curious if there's a play that you have not yet designed for that you would love to design.
Great question.
Ooh. I'm sitting in the wrong building to say this.
Oh no.
My favorite plays are the plays that are not yet written. I interact so much with younger generations, and I just love what they have to say. And so that is my eternal response to that. But with that said, there are a lot of plays I have not, out of 300, I was repeating myself a lot. Like, I left Chicago. I was doing Urinetown for the 6th time. I had nothing new to say about that play. And that's when I realized I'm in the way. There's a whole bunch of other people that have just arrived from school like I did, saying there's over 100 theaters. I can't do it here. And I was like, why am I taking this call? I shouldn't be, because I'm going to phone it in anyways. And so, with that said, out of those 300, there's still a lot of things I haven't done. I didn't do a lot of Shakespeare, actually, before coming to Stanton and working here, to be perfectly honest. I've done Midsummer. I'm good on the Midsummer. I've done the ballet, the opera, a movie made with it as a inspiration. I've done, I have.
All genres, all media.
I have done all the
You've done it all.
Midsummers. I think I did, opera, ballet, all of it. The Chicago Shakespeare Theater in Chicago they hired a lot of designers out of New York. I joked at one point with some of the big theaters in Chicago about getting a box office in New York. So people, when I reached out to them, thought I was from New York. I would just be at all the meetings in person. They'd be surprised. But because a lot of the bigger theaters, they felt that there was this thing about hiring the designers from other places. And I was like, I'm right here. Let me in. But now I get to say in this small town, I'm from Chicago.
That's true. And we go, oh.
It's all ridiculous. And so I'm glad to finally spend time with the playwright that in sixth grade we read King Lear.
Sixth grade? They made you do that in sixth grade?
They made us memorize a significant amount of
King
it
Lear?
too. Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
It
brutal.
surprises people when I quote King Lear. So we didn't see that coming. I was like,
the
well,
place for
you know.
12-year-olds. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's nice to have that kind of cyclical part of life where you get to come back to something. And I want to say I'm better with it now than I was in sixth grade.
I would hope so.
I understand a little bit more.
I would hope so.
I think it's throughout your lifetime kind of. But there's a,
Oh yeah, because depending on when you're touching it, you're thinking about different themes. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
I find that so true about so many Shakespeare plays, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. We had a hand up here. Yeah.
I'm delighted to hear you talk about returning to things that you have done before, because one of my greatest pleasures has been watching ASC actors post photos of themselves recycling a costume that one of their favorite ASC actors wore a decade earlier.
Oh, I didn't know that was happening, but awesome. I'm just not on the socials. No, I think that's great though. Maybe next time we go out, we call it the Heavens here, where Costume Stock is located, which is perfection as a costume designer to call costume storage heaven. But I should take the actors up there.
Yeah.
Be like, go on, tell me which things you recognize, because I haven't been here long
Let's walk
enough
down
to
memory lane.
know 10 years of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do rely on a lot of the people that work here. So when I'm pulling from costumes, to be like, has this been seen in the last 5 years? Because I don't want to,
Right.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool, actually. I love that that's happening. Yeah.
And for those of us who've been coming and watching,
Yeah. Oh, right. Yes.
it's hard not to see that costume and say, I remember.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
absolutely.
great.
Yeah. What else?
So you've obviously collaborated with a lot of directors in the course of your career. Can
Yes.
you talk about the nature of that relationship, and specifically here at ASC this year, because there
Yeah.
are different people with different visions.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. The collaboration doesn't really look that different from show to show. What it really is getting to know each other. So I'm not relying on years of working together, that I was able to do in Chicago. Here it's like everybody's new. So we're new to each other all the time. And so again, that kind of slowing down and remember to do the introductions and just, who are you and what's your aesthetic and what do you like and what do you gravitate towards? When I worked with the director from Winter's Tale, always stylishly dressed. Just absolutely, just couldn't get enough of the way the director, And I thought, okay, I took visual cues from that, and I was like, I know what you'll like, you know what I mean? And then we'll filter that into the design, And so that design grew out of me observing how the director personally styled himself too. So the director is really responsible for a lot of that design, just based on their own clothing,
Whether
that
he
they
knew
wear.
it or not. Yeah.
Yeah, and contemporary. You know, and so, and also a big exhibit that that happened at the Met recently. And so just all that kind of stuff. And he mentioned it in passing, and I was like, well, I know who Dapper Dan is. And, you know, so we did a whole back and forth about just like, what kind of clothes do you like? You know, that kind of thing. And that really helped us be on the same page, you know, to move the conversation forward and to have that trust, you know, between us, that I kind of had that creative sovereignty to go off and run and play, and that I trusted him to respond well to it. You know, like we had that, and he trusted me to go make good choices and that kind of stuff, because it's a tight window of time within which to work. Mm-hmm. And so not every single detail can be constantly communicated. Like, I'm thinking about yellow pants, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, you know, it's like, I got you, you know, like that kind of stuff. Like, I got you, you know, and go. And so, or I think I know what you want, you know, kind of thing. And so it's helpful here to have that kind of, that time we give ahead of time to talk with each other. And so I'll know, you know, that we're using the same filter. Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions?
Your kids let you help them style themselves?
This is being recorded. No. They'll never watch it. They've had enough of me. I've always let them pick out their own clothes. And we've always been thrifters. Actually, when they were 5, their aunt and uncle, without meaning harm, took them to Target. They had never been to one before. Their minds were absolutely blown. They're like, they came back and they're like, they have the same thing in 10 different sizes. And here we are, we're going from Chicago to this small town where they were living, and we were acting like the small town going to the city. And because my kids had never been into a store that had multiples of anything. It was a thrift store. It was always a surprise. And so they've always dressed themselves. They continue to do so. They're 17. I love watching what they come up with because honestly, I'm studying it, you know, like, oh, this is, you know, 10 years from now, I'll put that on stage. For the awkward person that plays D&D at the Y. And so, but when they were little, they wanted some stuffed animals, Minecraft. And Minecraft stuffed animals actually didn't exist at first, because I know why, because it's all square shapes and they're really hard to do. But I said, well, you can make them. And so my kids have been sewing. And so actually they know how to make too. And so one of them, I'm happy to say, is the designer and creator of all the costumes for the high school production of Crucible that's coming up. So if you go see Crucible, you'll get to see something I had nothing to do with. I want to say I've literally had nothing to do with this show. I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm intentionally trying to be surprised by it. But if it's bad, I'm so sorry. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm staying out of it. Like, because you can't have creative freedom, you know. And also they, you know, they're always telling me I'm a bit of a shadow, and I don't want to be a shadow. You know what I mean? I want to be a spotlight. I want to be a mirror. I want to be a sounding board. I want to be a lot of things. I want to be a drum, but I don't want to be a shadow. And so I'm really trying to do this as much as possible.
I admire your restraint.
They also both started driving recently, so I apologize in advance for that too.
Watch out, Stanton drivers.
Small town. Yeah, I know. No, if you see them doing something wrong, yell at them for me. That's why we chose small town. You recognize people, and then you can say, hey.
That's true. It's very true. Other questions for Elizabeth? We have time. Yes.
This may not at all be your purview, but I also think that everything falls from heaven.
Yes, it does. It actually does here. It comes out of the heavens, falls on the bodies.
I know that we don't have a hair and makeup department.
That is very true.
Separate from any
Yes.
other things that they're wearing. And there's a lot of fun hair in Romeo and Juliet. I haven't seen
Yep.
it yet. Obviously hasn't opened. How do those conversations go with, are you involved in discussions at all about how their hair will look?
I am always happy to help and support, provide research. If somebody wants to go get a specific style, that kind of stuff, absolutely. Hair is very personal And this assumption that we can just go tell people what to do with their heads is a thing that we have to stop doing. And so I do ask quite a few questions ahead of time, you know, and like one of the things I say, do you have any, I forget what the final, I have a questionnaire that I send out that's private, but it's basically, is there anything cultural that will be respected? Not that will be thought about or considered, like will be respected. And so if somebody says, I don't cut my hair, they don't cut their hair. Or I don't show my wrists. You don't show your wrists. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff, just period. And so hair is one of those things. And so, yeah. So I say, what do you want to do? What are you thinking? What would be fun? What do you, now that you've run this a few times, feels okay, you know?
Yeah.
Because we can have big, ambitious plans for a lot of things, but when it comes down to it, if you have 30 seconds between those two characters, hair's not important, you know, like maybe a drink of water, you know, and that kind of stuff. And so I try not to encourage anybody to commit to an idea that will actually have lasting impact. It's one thing if we were doing a few weekends.
Yeah.
But 3 months? No.
Yeah.
You know, let's not. And so also, I don't think these shows are about hair. It's that, you know, I mean, like this, they're acting, they're doing, you know, like if I always say like, because sometimes people will be like, my shoes. And I was like, if we're looking at your feet, then everything else went wrong. You know what I mean? Like, we did not do our job. And so I do like putting fun shoes on because you all are your eye level here with the feet. But yeah, so here's another one of those things. It's like, it's your head. What do you think? What's comfortable? You know, some people don't like anything tight. They don't like anything fitting. Or they've had really bad experiences with wigs, that kind of stuff. And so hair and makeup departments, that is a whole other career path. It's really wonderful. Hair and makeup people are amazing. But is it always necessary? No. You know, sometimes we just keep it simple and let the story and the performers do their job without all that interference. And also some people, performers, find themselves coming in an hour earlier than everybody else to like sit in curlers and do this and kind of feel a little tortured, where other people can just walk in and walk on the stage. You know, it's like, that's not fair either. You know, like if we're truly talking about equity, and if I want to base my whole career on equity, then that's an equity thing I need to explore. And so why am I asking this person to do an hour-and-a-half hairstyle for every performance, and this person just gets to walk in and walk on stage? You know, that's not fair. So yeah. And spending time in the hair and makeup chair is not for everybody. And in film, you get additional pay for it. You know, so that's a great place for it to happen. You know?
To follow up on that, thinking of the two gents' Baroque aesthetic, what were the conversations about around Baroque hair? Were they different than for Romeo and Juliet? Are we
haven't gotten there yet.
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Oh,
Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, Sunday.
Gotcha.
We'll get there.
Okay.
For the most part, a lot of the performers came in wearing some really great stylish haircuts. Again, they're the ones that have to live in their bodies all day outside of the theater, and so I like to honor what they're already coming in with. But yeah, no, I think I think you'll see that it works in both worlds. Hopefully you're not thinking about it.
Well, now that we've talked about it, I'm definitely going to think about it.
Yeah.
But, but only a little bit.
Only look at the hair.
Yeah.
Take notes. Yeah.
We will be taking notes.
Yeah.
We have time for one more question if anybody has another question. Yeah.
What we wear makes a big difference
Yes.
in how we feel. I know the way I feel wearing my Dickies work outfit in the garden is completely different from being in public wearing a Brooks Brothers blazer with gold buttons.
Yes.
In designing the costumes for a play that's set in a period different from contemporary, you design what we see, but do you ever go beyond that? And do you think that'd make any difference in the way the actor would feel and how they would?
It can, absolutely. It's really a joy to watch somebody step into their character when they're putting on a garment or putting on a pair of shoes. Boots that come up high make you stand and walk different than a sneaker. And sometimes you can see them literally like put the character on and step into a new way of being. Or to, like you said, like with the gold buttons, you're like, ooh, Does anybody know why we have buttons on our cuffs? I love fun facts.
No, enlighten us.
Yes, Napoleon.
That guy.
So Napoleon had all of these wonderful, he really wanted his military to be very finely dressed and polished, and they were. They were some of the best tailors of the time making for Napoleon's military. And, but they were wiping their noses on their sleeves, and he absolutely hated it. So the buttons started off on the top seam.
Oh my gosh.
Just
to rip up your
nose? To
nose?
stop them from
Oh my
wiping their
gosh.
noses on their sleeves because he thought it was so disgusting. It wasn't gentlemanly. And so that's how we ended up with those buttons. They have they're just decorative. But that's where all of those buttons came
That is
from.
wild.
But they were originally up the front of the sleeve, and it was to stop this.
That is wild.
Yeah, no, I love fun facts about clothing like that because it's like it all came from somewhere. Everything that I've got on today evolved from something, from somewhere, from some idea. And so, but yeah, those gold buttons, it reminded me of that Napoleon story. But in doing that, it made them behave differently. Yeah, our clothing really does influence who we are and how we feel about ourselves. That's why a lot of times it said, put on something nice and you'll feel better, because sometimes that really works for people. It's not always necessary. Sometimes you just get to sit in your feelings. But yeah, it's fun. And so this time period for Two Gentlemen of Verona, I keep referring to it because we just watched a run today and I'm getting ready to walk into the week of tech. You feel different in a frock coat than you do in a sweatshirt. You feel different in a pair of breeches than you do in sweatpants. You feel different in boots than you do in sneakers. And you behave differently and you act a little differently. It does do something. There's also the weight of the clothing is different, and again, some people can have aversions to that. So there's some lightweight versions of the same thing, and hopefully you won't notice the difference. But it informs us and allows us to kind of step into that other world and to kind of leave ourselves behind a little bit, which is the goal to, for everybody here to feel that they've, a lot of the rehearsal spaces I go to, a lot of directors will say, whatever's happening that day, you leave it at the door, then you come in, and I hope that for the audience too, that you get to come in and just leave it at the door and just be fully here and fully present and feel part of the story. You kind of have to be, the lights are on. But to leave it, to leave it at the door. You can always go back to it later if you want to, but that's the goal, I think, with costumes as well, is that you get to take off your clothing and put on somebody else's, get to put on that character. Yeah.
Well, Elizabeth, I have enjoyed our time together so much. Thank you. I think we've all enjoyed getting to know you. Please help me thank Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. And thank you for this hour and those 30 years you did. We've learned so much from you.
Yes.
So, and thank you for being here. Have a great rest of your night. And if you haven't seen Romeo and Juliet yet, you will enjoy it when you see it, I'm sure.